brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days. I hope you learn something. I hope you learn something. I hope you learn something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days. We learn something. I hope we learn something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to the daily All Hat, No Cattle News Rodeo. I'm your host, Hat. Got the Friday hat right here, 46 asterisk. And the logo designed by the one Christopher Gomez, great long friend of the channel. And I am special treat today wearing my, let me loosen up the camera here for a second, get a little crazy here. I'm wearing my I Stand for the Flag and Kneel for the Cross t-shirt today, commemorating a Friday like any other Friday, and that I feel pretty darn good, actually. Didn't sleep all that well last night. Skirted a migraine earlier, but got around it, and I'm all ready to go. So you know what? Without any further ado, by the way, had a perfect stream on DLive this morning, near as I can tell. So yesterday's problem should not appear again. If it does, it's on DLive's end, not mine. But again, thanks to all of you, especially Electric Dog, who brought it to my attention quickly yesterday. Appreciate it immensely. All right, so let's get right to it. Our first, only Babylon Bee bookend, because today is Friday, which means we will be ending with my pick from this week's best Freedom Tunes. Oh, the YouTube URL didn't kick in. Give me just a second there. Sometimes YouTube does not show up when it's supposed to. Let me fix that real quickly. There we go. All right, so our one Babylon Bee bookend. This is the one, of course, on the left from their politics section, and it is tagged, headline says it all, Toobin reinstated in touching interview, quote, I got off easy. And there is a picture of the one and only Jeffrey Toobin, Mr. Zoom Zoom himself. And folks, no more to be said than that. Thank you, the Babylon Bee. I will have more on the inimitable Toobin in just a little bit. But first, my personal conceit, the market. I shouldn't be on that page. Where is it, please? There we are. There we are. A real seesaw day for the market. It closed barely up at over 0.04% in the black today, closing again below the 44,500 mark. The market has been basically flat with slight losses for the last 5 weeks running now. The S&P 500 and the NASDAQ were also up only fractions. Gold actually slid over a percent today, down well below the $1,900 an ounce mark now. Crude oil is well above the $70 mark. It is at $70.81 per barrel of West Texas Intermediate sweet crude. Crude oil is continuing to see its steady rise. And Bitcoin has had a bit of a better day. It is currently just over 37,000 at 37,286 and change. And as you may know, one of the other larger Bitcoin mining operations in China was shut down, I believe today or late yesterday. So China is walking away from the Bitcoin market quite fiercely. But you also may remember that Costa Rica declared this week that Bitcoin would now be considered legal tender in that country. Moving right along. Once again, the laptop keeps on giving, folks. We have a text chain here on Hunter's laptop between him and his dear business friend, Devin Archer. You may remember Devin Archer was together with Biden in the Rosemont Seneca Partners investment firm, and then both of them joined the board of Burisma in 2014. Archer was on first. Biden came on shortly thereafter. And as you also may remember, Archer was the former college roommate of Christopher Heinz, who was the stepson of the climate czar John Kerry, former Secretary of State. And he is also the co-founder of Rosemont Capital Private Equity with Archer. So anyway, what we have here is at first an innocuous bit of exchange, and then Devin Archer on the 6th of March 2019 at 6:25 in the a.m. says the following. Why did your dad's administration appointees arrest me and try and put me in jail? Just curious. Some of our partners asking out here. Why would they try and ruin my family and destroy my kids and no one from your family's side step in and at least try to help me? I don't get it. And I'm depressed. Bunch of these Asians getting in my head asking me the same, so just curious what I should answer. So Hunter basically blows Devin Archer off, saying, hey, this is how the system works. But if you're a good guy, you'll rise above it all. And then Hunter signs off with, we aren't a banana republic, buddy. The powerful are targets in this country, the more powerful they become. But the truth prevails if you have the stamina and guts and enough love to stay the course. Now, why would Devin Archer be complaining about being arrested and put in jail? Because, you may or may not remember, we covered this a couple years ago on the YouTube channel when we did a very deep dive into Hunter Biden and his business dealings. Devin Archer was arrested along with several others and were charged with selling $60 million in worthless securities to the Oglala Sioux Nation. He listed Joe and Hunter as Joe Biden and Hunter Biden as potential witnesses in a questionnaire for potential jurors. Hunter didn't like that. Hunter complained about that, it's a thing between Hunter and Archer. By the way, Archer was initially convicted of that crime. The conviction was overturned in 2018 after the 2018 conviction. The case was reversed, but last year an appellate court reinstated the conviction. We don't know exactly where any appeals are at this point in time, but I do know that Devin Archer is currently in federal custody. And this is all courtesy, by the way, of the Washington Examiner by their investigative reporter, Tori Richards. Thank you so much, Tori. Let me fix the DLive chat here. It's a little off. Let me drag it down here. That's better. All right. So, you're not going to see me do this often, folks, but today I'm actually going to the Daily Beast. I think I've done that maybe twice before, but I was led here by an article from the Daily Wire that referenced this particular piece. And as I like to do whenever I can, is go to the original source from any news aggregation that I find. And this is case in point. It seems that the Daily Beast was able to interview a number of CNN staffers regarding the, as we just saw in the Babylon Bee, reinstatement of Jeffrey Toobin to being an on-air legal analyst. You may remember, in fact, Jeffrey Toobin, at least before he was suspended for his Zoom self-pleasuring during a editorial call on the New Yorker magazine, of which he was a writer for some 27 years. And he was subsequently let go after an internal search. There were a number of CNN staffers who were not happy about Toobin's return to grace after an 8-month hiatus. Several have asked if CNN even bothered to do an internal review on Toobin, or just took the New Yorker's word for it on their review. So let me quote a few people here. A person familiar with the matter pointed out that while there were mixed feelings at the network about Toobin's return, he was greeted warmly by those in the newsroom following his interview with, what's her name, Alison Camerata, I believe her first name is. The source noted men and women hugged him after he left the set. They seemed happy he was back. It's invisible if people are grossed out because they wouldn't be the ones to come up to him. The couple dozen in the newsroom seemed happy to have him back. Quoting the article further, the feeling wasn't shared by other CNN insiders, however. One former contributor said they weren't surprised that the network brought Toobin back, but that, quote, it's insane that they have him on air, close quote, after his transgression. Another insider observed that CNN came across as hypocritical. The source said, yeah, it'd be nice if occasionally CNN held itself to the same standards it currently holds Fox to. One Fox insider said, it's really atrocious that men who expose themselves on Zoom are welcomed back, yet a woman would be canceled in an instant. Toobin's return, continuing the quote, Toobin's return shows that statements about investigations and making people feel safe at work are nothing but lip service to shut people up. And I've never been impressed with Jeffrey Toobin as an analyst anyway. I think almost always his takes are incredibly partisan and very, very likely not to be based in law at all. But that's just me. I'm not a lawyer. You feel free to disagree. By the way, it's going to be a shorter segment on YouTube today. It's kind of a light news day, but the after show is pretty chock-a-block with stuff. Pardon me for not teasing it. I apologize for the unprofessionalism there. Now here's something near and dear to my heart: the Wisconsin election. There is a investigation ongoing right now, including an audit into the Wisconsin 2020 November election. As you know, there was a major legal case filed against Wisconsin by the Trump campaign back last year, and certain irregularities were noted in the case that went to the state Supreme Court, but the court ultimately ruled that no actions would be taken regarding the vote. Remember, Trump lost Wisconsin by a little over 20,000 votes. But one of the big things that we've been dealing with is the backlash from these Zuckerberg-backed grants that were handed out in large amounts, I should say, to the largest municipalities here in Wisconsin, and that would be Milwaukee, Madison, Green Bay, Kenosha, and Racine. I, of course, live in Kenosha, and Racine is only a few minutes north of me in Racine County. I live in Kenosha County. And let me get into this article here. This is by Lee High. I hope I'm pronouncing that lightly, from the Epoch Times. And a think tank based here in Wisconsin called Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, which I'll refer to from now on as WIL, has requested and received records from 196 of the 216 municipalities that received between $2,212 to $3.4 million in grant funding for the 2020 election from the Center for Tech and Civic Life, or CTCL, a nonprofit funded in part by Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla Chan. According to Will, this analysis provides convincing evidence that the CTCL grants played a role in increasing turnout for Joe Biden in 2020. They also state that, quote, Wisconsin lawmakers should act to ensure local election administration isn't captured by private money seeking partisan advantage. So basically, Will found that, and I'm quoting, a statistically significant increase, unquote, in turnout in cities from CTCL grants, but it was almost exclusively on behalf of Democrat turnout. In fact, according to Will, they figure that these CTCL grants were responsible for at least an 8,000 vote swing for Biden in Wisconsin. Now, that is not anywhere near what Biden won by. I'm not making that point at all. YouTube, I'm not making that point. But that is a statistically significant increase from 2016 to 2020. The report noted that according to the Amistad Project, CTCL's 20 largest donations all went to cities that Hillary Clinton won in the 2016 election, targeting states such as Minnesota, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Will also said, by dumping large sums of money into strategically selected municipalities, groups seeking partisan advantage could, in effect, enlist local election administrators to get out the vote operations that serve to help one candidate over another. Now, this is the part, again, you need to read to the end of these articles. What I've just read right now is damning enough, but this is where it really gets interesting. The fact is, the report also said that CTCL exerted, quote, a concerning amount of control, unquote, and access to election oversight in cities that received grant money. Okay, folks, hold on to your hats. Listen to this. In Milwaukee, CTCL assisted in the ballot curing process. In Green Bay, CTCL officials were given keys and access to absentee ballots. The report noted that the process was so frustrating that assistants to the clerk were threatening to leave. For the 5 big cities who received most of the money, CTCL stipulated that the municipalities must hold to the, quote, Wisconsin Safe Voting Plan, or CTCL may discontinue, modify, withhold part of, or ask for the return of all or part of the grant funds. Now, this is the Wisconsin Safe Voting Plan, and this was proposed by the 5 recipient cities. 4 main recommendations to ensure a safe and secure election. The following. Encourage and increase absentee voting. We know that was a problem in Wisconsin. Dramatically expand strategic voter education and outreach efforts. And again, we know those went to almost exclusively blue strongholds. Continuing, particularly to historically disenfranchised residents. Sorry, I left that off. Next, launch poll worker recruitment. Again, these are these are blue areas. Training and safety efforts as well. And finally, ensure safe and efficient election day administration. The report found that most of the grant money was spent on poll worker recruitment, hazard pay, what the heck is hazard pay for elections, I don't know, and training, vote by mail or absentee voting equipment or supplies, election administration equipment, and temporary staffing support. Will concludes, while we have no objection to the use of resources to help people vote with appropriate safeguards, it is important to remember that elections are a contest. When resources are expended that ease voting in some areas and not in others, their expenditure has a distorting effect on the election. It is not surprising, the report concludes, that they were perceived as unfair. They were unfair. And just in case you'd forgotten, CTCL last year distributed $350 million to nearly 2,500 election jurisdictions across 49 states last year. So that is a thing, folks. That is a thing. Again, I am not saying that fraud had anything to do with the outcome. Not saying that. But it is a fact that this group has shown that these CTCL grants were focused pretty much exclusively on getting out the blue vote, and were responsible for at least an 8,000 vote swing between 2016 and 2020. All right. Now, here's where it looks to be deceiving. Let me read the headline first. Judge rejects effort to return MLB All-Star Game to Georgia. Okay, fair enough. Now, look at where this article is from. Breitbart, okay? Breitbart.com. Now, you read this article, however, and you see things like the following. The rewrite of Georgia's election rules followed former President Donald Trump's repeated unproven claims of fraud after his presidential election loss to President Joe Biden. Biden has declared the Georgia election law un-American and Jim Crow in the 21st century. Does that sound like Breitbart to you? No, of course it doesn't. And that is because this was not written by Breitbart. This is an article that Breitbart picked up from the AP. You got to pay attention to this stuff, folks. Just because something says Breitbart.com or DailyWire.com doesn't mean they had any hand in writing it. Every so often, these places just pick up a wire report and present it under their banner, and you're left to figure out on your own who actually wrote it. And we all know that the AP is incredibly leaning to the left. So pay attention to this stuff. Now let's get to the actual meat of the matter. Basically, there was a lawsuit filed on behalf of a number of businesses in the Atlanta area, and they sued Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association for $100 million in losses and $1 billion in punitive damages because of MLB yanking the All-Star Game out of Atlanta and putting it into Denver. Again, Denver being in a state that is much, much, much more white than Georgia, into a city that is by far more white than Atlanta, and into a state that has slightly stricter voting laws than Georgia. But this was all done in the name of social justice. Here's the thing. The lawsuit was thrown out because the judge, get this, said that the group couldn't prove damages. Here's the thing. Once again, we have a court ruling that until you're hurt, I'm not going to help you. So instead of coming up with a remedy to keep you from getting hurt, they're going to make you take the hit, and then you come back to them and say, here's my loss sheet, here's how much money I lost, now I've got to spend a bunch of money all over again to present this case to the court again. That's what's happened here. Does that sound anything like last year regarding certain other lawsuits that were filed before and after the election? Does it sound anything like that? Because it's exactly like that. This was ruled, by the way, in a court in New York State. U.S. District Judge Valerie E. Caprani made this ruling. At one point, Caprani said this case is not about whether the Georgia law is a good law or a bad law. In the ruling, Caproni said she had doubts whether Atlanta businesses could have suffered anything close to $100 million in damages. She said the plaintiff further undermined its case when it suggested that MLB could remedy the harm by setting up a $100 million relief fund for harmed businesses. Such a fund, she noted, would make it hard to argue any harm would be irreparable. So once again, we're suing for damages that we are going to incur by not having this take place in our town, and then the judge says, no, because you haven't been damaged yet. And then the judge also says, by the way, this asking for relief for the damages doesn't help your claim, it hurts your claim, because you're showing that you could be helped by getting the money. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. You haven't shown that you're damaged, and you're asking for help with damages when they happen, and that hurts your case. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Skullcram says in the DLive chat, surely the cancellations motel rooms alone would show damages. Oh, absolutely, but those are just a small part of the case. You have all of these small businesses around Fulton County Stadium, plus the vendors who would have been working at the game, things like that. This was all added into it. So those canceled reservations are only a small part of it. So I'm sure they didn't rise to the level of damages that the judge was demanding that the suit filers showed. But this just makes no sense to me whatsoever. Even if you could say that the $100 million is questionable, I don't see how asking for a fund to be set up to ameliorate any damages that can be proven to occur after the game doesn't happen in Atlanta, how can that hurt your case? The judge says that makes it show that the damage isn't irreparable. Well, that's what the relief fund is for, to repair it. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Again, for those of you who are lawyers or no lawyers, please email me, AHNC_hat@protonmail.com. I've checked my email in a week, but I'll get to it eventually. Please, please, please help me figure this out, because I just don't get it. Oh, that reminds me. Excuse me just a second. I have to put something at the end of the after show to let me see here. American. I can spell. I don't want to say this out loud. Here we go. All right, just a second. All right. Okay. I've got an announcement for the after show that I have to find exactly what I want here. Let me see here. Okay, just a second. Yeah, I have a suit that has been filed by American Frontline Doctors that I will discuss in the after show. I can't describe it right now because YouTube will probably kick me off the channel for good. But I do have to bring it up because I need to look into it a little bit, but it looks like I will be reading it into the record. I heard about it on the Dave Rubin show today while I was resting before the show, and it sounds incredibly important, and I think it needs to be put out there in full. It's a 113-page legal filing, but again, I've got to look into it in a little more detail, but I may be reading it this weekend. I certainly don't expect anyone to be there for the reading, but I will be putting it into the record so you can watch it replay on DLive and Trovo, and they'll stay up on those. And I'll also put it up on Gab TV. It should fit inside Gab TV. If not, I can break it up into two parts. I'll get to it in full during the after show. Again, I can't discuss it right now. How's that for a tease? Okay, so getting to the economy, let's have some good news here. And I've got some even better news after this article. This is from Fox Business, written by Megan Henney, and the headline says it all. Federal unemployment benefits ending for some Americans this week. Roughly 16 million Americans will lose their unemployment benefits. This says prematurely, which is technically correct because, as you know, the American Family Recovery Act, or whatever the heck they called that $2 trillion boondoggle back in February, that was passed purely along party line vote through reconciliation, that extended the $300 a week federal addition to state unemployment through September. And as has been shown over the last 3 months, job growth is increasing, but employment is not at the rate it should be. And the main reason many are saying is because people are making between $32,000 and $41,000 a year on unemployment, thanks in large part to the extra federal benefits. And why would you take a job for $15 an hour when you're making that on unemployment? Good question. Other people are saying That it's a problem with child care, I don't believe that for a second. I think that's a red herring. I've yet to see any numbers that actually put that into a proper perspective. But anyway, so what we've got here, we've got 25 Republican states that are going to be ending the job, the extra $300 unemployment from the feds. They're not going to accept that money anymore, basically. So the first opting out will be Alaska, Iowa, Mississippi, and Missouri, and those benefits all end tomorrow, June 12th. According to the article, the other states terminating benefits early: Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Georgia, Florida, Idaho, Indiana, Maryland, Montana, Nebraska, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, West Virginia, and Wyoming will stop giving unemployed workers an extra $300 in benefits sometime over the summer. And just to remind you, the measures came in light of the Labor Department's April payroll report, which revealed the economy added just 266,000 jobs last month, sharply missing the 1 million number forecast. Payroll growth also missed expectations in May, igniting concerns about a labor shortage and its potential impact on the economy's tepid rebound from the pandemic. So that's the thing. Now, here's some even better news. Let's get to the this great chart here. I have to give CNN.com Business some credit. This is an excellent piece of work here. I've got two charts to show you and it's under the headline Tracking America's Recovery. And the first I have here is what they're calling the Back to Normal Index. And this is a graph of the individual states created by Moody's Analytics and CNN Business. And it's got 37 national and state level indicators ranging from 0 to 100%, representing the economy returning to its pre-pandemic level in March of last year. Okay, so what we have here is basically the darker the color, the closer they are to 100% and above over last year's numbers for that state's economy. And as you can see here, the two greenest are Idaho at 100%, and not to be outdone, South Dakota at 104%. So South Dakota's economy has actually improved 4% over last year, before the pandemic kicked in, before the lockdowns kicked in. Other notable states are Florida, that is 98% at 98%, and South Carolina at 92%. Now let's look at the states that aren't doing as well. Louisiana, 87%. Not great, but doing okay. Texas is only at 89%, very disappointed. But you remember, Texas did have lockdowns that halted business for a while, and they're still trying to recover from that. There is also, of course, the decline in energy jobs. That's a thing right now, thanks to the Biden administration. Let's look at some of these states also. California, only at 84%. Oregon, only at 83%. And Washington, doing a little better at 88%. Now let's look at the states doing the worst. Illinois, 79%. New York State, 77%. Not doing well at all. Not doing well at all. I mean, look at Maine, 92%. So these states have got to get their acts together. New Jersey's only at 87%, Delaware's at 85%, and Maryland's at 83%. The only Northeast state doing really well is Rhode Island at 97%, and Connecticut at 92%. Then you've got to go all the way up to the upper section of the country to get into the 90%. Not good, not good. All right, now we've got the unemployment rates. This is a very interesting graph, as you can see here. Let me see if I can blow it up for you. No, I can't. All right, so as you can see here, the lighter the color, the lower the unemployment. So right now, looking at it, you can tell that the majority of the states not doing well are Democrat states. California, unemployment rate is 8.3%. Nevada, 8% flat. And of course, Nevada relies heavily on tourism, and that hasn't come back yet. So until the casinos and hotels in Las Vegas and the convention spaces in Las Vegas start filling up, those ancillary jobs are not going to be coming back to full employment. Louisiana also relies heavily on tourism, and New Orleans took a huge hit last year in the pandemic, and they're currently at 7.3%. The only Republican state not really doing all that well right now. Although New Mexico is also not doing well. It's at 8.2%. Now let's look at some of the really, really top-end Democrat states. Illinois, 7.1%. New York, 7.4%. Or Pennsylvania, pardon me, 7.4%. New York, 8.2%. Connecticut, 8.1%. New Jersey, 7.5%. Now you got Rhode Island at 6.3%, Delaware at 6.4%, and Maryland at 6.2%. So these are almost, 80% of these are Democrat states, or at least with Democrat acting governors. We all know that the New Jersey governor is technically a Republican, but he's acts anything but. But these are all states that are sucking wind economically with very high unemployment rates. And again, look at South Dakota. Unemployment is 2.8%. That is 0.7% below the national average last year, I should say 2019, at the height of the economy. North Dakota is at 4.2%. So there are good numbers out there, but there are also bad numbers. So states need to get their acts together, and hopefully some of this unemployment ending will help things along. We'll have to see. But Illinois still hasn't opened back up fully. Neither is New York. I don't know about Pennsylvania. You guys can tell me what Pennsylvania is doing as far as opening up goes. I think Pennsylvania. Let me try this again. I think Philadelphia. You got Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, all those P's. I think Philadelphia is still closed up pretty tightly. And I have a story about Philadelphia in the after show in the Law and Order block. A fascinating lawsuit out of the Gun Owners Association aimed directly at Philadelphia. We'll talk about that in a bit. Another piece from the Washington Examiner, this by Susan Ferrecchio. I did not enjoy reading this story at all. The headline set me off immediately. Latest bipartisan infrastructure plan pitches higher gas tax. Okay, bipartisan, higher tax. Now, you might not be surprised to know that one of the leaders of this push to increase the gas tax by indexing it to inflation is one Mitt Romney. Now, the gas tax, in all fairness, hasn't been raised in 28 years. It's been 18 cents for a very long time. But if we index it to inflation, then we're going to see it rising to over another 15 cents over what it is right now at the current rate of inflation in just a couple of years. Skullcram says in the D-Live chat, Las Vegas' largest electronics show was canceled due to COVID. That makes a very large part of the money on that one show. Yes. I can't remember the name of that show. I know it's looked after quite extensively by all the publications. Oh shoot, the Consumer Electronics Convention, isn't that it? Consumer Electronics, I think is the name of it. But yeah, that's thanks for mentioning that, Skullcram. I appreciate it. But yeah, so Mitt Romney is trying to put together a bipartisan infrastructure bill, and he's proposing tying the gas tax to inflation to help pay for it. This is the only Republican proposal for infrastructure that's actually backing increases in taxes. And I don't think it's going to work. I think the Democrats like it, but I don't think enough Republicans are going to like it to let it go through. Romney is not, of course, the most sought-after Republican at the congressional lunch table. So I don't think this is going to go anywhere, but I thought I'd bring it to your attention, just exactly what some of these people are planning. You remember, there was the initial $1.7 trillion ask for this quote-unquote infrastructure package from Biden. And Republicans came back with a package of around, I think, 680 to 800 billion. And Biden threw them out of the White House, wouldn't even talk to them about it. So they came back, and they've been I shouldn't say arguing, they've been going back and forth for about a week now, and Biden shut down further negotiations. I think it was yesterday or the day before. Said he wasn't going to talk to the Republicans anymore about it, that the Democrats were going to go do it on their own. Now, of course, the Democrats can push this through, at least in certain parts, because they still have one more bite at the reconciliation apple. And you remember the reconciliation process is that a bill that has to do with budget measures can go through Congress on a pure party line vote. It only needs a majority vote in the Senate to get through, not the normal 60 votes. It used to be you only got one reconciliation a year, and that was a budget reconciliation. But the Senate parliamentarian earlier this year, under great pressure from the Democrats, ruled that in fact you can have it twice in 1 year, at least twice. It may have been three, but at least twice. So the Democrats, if they phrase things properly, could get the bulk of that quote-unquote infrastructure package through on a pure party line vote. But we have been hearing quite often from Manchin and Sinema that they are not amenable to putting this thing through on a pure party line vote. Now, Manchin specifically is getting hammered in the press. There are a number of dark money groups that are putting out millions of dollars of ads attacking him in West Virginia and across the country. I think all of us at our first opportunity should call Senator Manchin's Senate office number. All you have to do is search on the internet, Senator Manchin, M-A-N-C-H-I-N, Senator Manchin telephone number. Boom, it'll come up. Call that number. You may get an automated response. Leave a message. Just back Senator Manchin. Do the same for Senator Sinema. Even though you're not their constituents, this kind of support means a lot to elected officials, because they know that they might be able to count on you for a donation on their re-election campaign if they do well enough in your eyes. And I would be real interested to see who primaries Manchin the next time he's up for election, and see what kind of a comparison that would be. But we need to support Manchin and Sinema as much as we can. So call their offices, and if you have a chance, leave a message on their electronic boards. Every senator, every congressman has an electronic board you can leave a message on. Some of them only accept messages from constituents, so you may not be able to get through electronically, but you can always call on the phone. I highly, highly urge you to do this. I've done it before. I'm planning on doing it again real soon. It's important that we let them know that we stand for them, especially as people who are not part of their constituency, but understand what kind of pressure they're under. Please let them know. Please let them know. All right, a bit of international and defense news, and we'll be out of the YouTube block and on to the after show. As I said, a little light YouTube block today, kind of a light news day. But I have an article here from the Epoch Times by Jack Phillips. It quotes General Mark Milley, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and he was in front of a congressional committee yesterday, and he warned that China is increasing its military capacity at a, quote, very serious and sustained rate, close quote, and said it could pose a threat to worldwide stability and peace. Now, you know, as I've covered often, China is absolutely rattling the sabers in a very major way over our support for Taiwan. Anytime someone says a word in support of Taiwan, the CCP jumps on their neck repeatedly and with great force, and won't stop until they cry uncle and retract whatever thing they said that supported Taiwan. Case in point, John Cena, just what was it, last week, made the mistake of calling Taiwan a country during a puff piece as he was promoting the latest Fast and Furious movie. I think it's F9, isn't that it? F9? And he called Taiwan a country. And the next day, in Mandarin, he recorded himself apologizing to the Chinese people for making a mistake. He never said what the mistake was, but everyone knew what he meant. And Cena took a lot of crap for that, and rightfully so. But let's all remember, as has been pointed out by people smarter than myself, John Cena's just a monkey on the end of a string. He's under contract to that studio, and that studio gets major money from Chinese film sales, or ticket sales for those movies. And if China tells its people they can't go, or if it pulls the movie from the theaters altogether, that movie isn't going to be paid for. Period. Without Chinese ticket sales, movies won't make the money like F9 that are put into them. They can't get their budget back. It's impossible. They need that overseas market. In fact, when it was released, as I understand it, F9 made more money overseas in Taiwan and China than it did here in the U.S. Shows how vital those markets are, because Hollywood and the rest of American media have become addicted to Chinese money. So I give John Cena a bit of a pass, but still, it is what it is. But let me quote Let me quote this article further. Also quoted is Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin, quoting Austin regarding the Defense Department budget request of $715 billion. Quote, "The request is driven by a recognition that our competitors, especially China, continue to advance their capabilities. We must outpace those advances to remain a credible deterrent to conflict around the world." So it's a thing. And as I understand it, the latest budget proposal from the White House, when you factor in inflation, the Army actually loses money for this next budget allocation. And the other branches only see a very slight increase, but not enough to cover inflation regarding their payouts to their service members, their salaries, if you will. So we are once again watching a Democrat administration ignore our military to the point of losing our ability to be a worldwide deterrent to bad actors. I read an article also today that I couldn't quite get into. It's very complicated, but it's about how the Marine Corps is being retrofitted to focus on the the Indo-Pacific theater, I should say, Indo-Pacific theater, and it's focusing it on being able to fight a war, say, in Taiwan, or on other shores, but we're reducing its capability worldwide. It's no longer going to be a basically, go in and kill anywhere force. It's going to be focused on one region, and that severely hamstrings it. And it's being done in the name of budget cuts. By focusing the Marines on one mission, you're able to defer other mission capabilities. In fact, one thing I read in the article is, according to the latest proposal, the Marines will no longer have tanks. Any tanks. If the Marines need armored support, they've got to get the Army to provide it, which adds a whole nother layer of logistics to any battle. And as we all know, the Army is not as quick response oriented as are the Marine Corps. It's the nature of the beast. It's how those systems were designed. So if the Marine Corps is on the ground, needs armor support, it doesn't have it organically anymore. It's got to get it from the Army, according to this latest order of battle for the Marines. I'm very, very scared very frightened for our capabilities with stuff like this happening. Well, I wish I could leave YouTube on a better note, but that is it. I thank you for being here. For those of you who follow the game streams, there will be no game stream Monday morning. I have a dentist appointment, getting the latest refit of my lower, getting ready for the addition of the parts when my implants are in, and that's still going to be weeks and weeks away from now, but that is a thing. So no show Monday morning, but we'll be back hopefully Monday afternoon at 4 p.m. for the news rodeo. And again, please come over, if you're on YouTube right now, come over to DLive or Trovo. The links are in the chat there, because I've got a major announcement at the end of the after show regarding something I want to read into the record, possibly tomorrow afternoon, and I want everyone to, as many people to know about it as possible. But again, I can't mention it on YouTube because I'll probably get yanked off the service if I talk about it in detail. Let me just say it's vaccine related, and I'll leave it at that. All right, so thank you, YouTube. I'll see you when I see you. Bye-bye.